Now, one of the biggest complaints I see about Andor is that it kind of feels like a generic sci-fi show, more so than it feels like Star Wars. That sure, it's a good show and all, but it could be plugged into any universe and it works exactly the same because there's nothing that makes it Star Wars. Outside of some of the iconography like stormtroopers and such, or the rebel base on Yavin, that sort of thing. But there's nothing about it that truly gives it that Star Wars feeling, like the inclusion of the Force, for example. Though that's not entirely true about the Force, because in Season 2 of Andor it is very subtly brought in, and dare I say, used perfectly both for what the show is going for and what Star Wars itself is. Because yes, this show is, I don't know about intentionally trying not to use the Force, but it certainly doesn't want the Force to become, shall we say, a very useful tool in the toolbox of our heroes. The show does seem to want to give us the average person's view of the Star Wars galaxy at this particular time during the reign of the Empire, and wants to show us what it's like to fight back against the Empire without, again, having the Force with you. However, even if the Force is not overtly with them or being used by any of our heroes the same way a Jedi might be able to use it, the Force is still very much there. It is with them. Everyone and everything in the galaxy is a part of it. It also then does, even if you don't directly see how it works, it does still have an impact on all things, as all beings in the Star Wars galaxy also have a place and a purpose, a destiny, as George Lucas himself explains.
Found in all living things, around us, flows from us, controls individuals, yet we have free will. We have a destiny if we want to follow it. We live for a reason and must discover what it is.
And I know some might hear that and say that all sounds a bit contradictory. How can the Force control you, yet you also have free will? How can you have a destiny and a purpose, but only if you want to follow it? And, well, the character of Cassian, his story that we see in Andor, just might be the perfect example to explain all of this. Because as the Force healer that we see in Season 2 senses, there is indeed something very special about Cassian.
You. All that you've been gathering. The strength of spirit. Surely you must feel it.
And what she seems to be able to do, what she even says she's able to do, beyond a touch of Force healing maybe, but she can sense the weight of things, or you could say she senses the importance of things, if they have a greater purpose or not, beyond just the usual purpose all beings have, because again, all beings in the Star Wars galaxy, according to George Lucas, have a destiny and a place and a purpose. But most of the time, I'd argue, or for the average person, if you will, that purpose or destiny, where they belong or what will give them a fulfilling life, is a rather simple one in the grand scheme of things. They're meant to find someone else, perhaps, to raise a family on a farm on a quiet planet somewhere. Something like that is probably the destiny of most in the Star Wars galaxy. But Cassian seems to be something different. His purpose seems to be a greater one, and the Force healer can sense that about him. That he is taking away what he needs to from all of these experiences that he has been through, all these places that the Force has led him to and then through, to become someone, a messenger perhaps, that will do something of the utmost importance. Even Luthen at one point begins to wonder about Cassian.
Sometimes I wonder. You appeared when I needed you. Aldani, Narkina, Ferrix, Sinar, Minaral, Gorman. And here we are.
The Force is indeed strong with Cassian, even if he is not necessarily strong with it. And as we know because we've seen Rogue One, or major spoilers incoming if you somehow haven't seen that movie yet, but that greater purpose he seems destined for is to play a big part in stealing the Death Star plans, which is a major piece of the puzzle, or step towards the ultimate destruction of the Empire. And destroying the Empire with its Sith Lord Emperor at the helm is important to the Force itself because it and he, the Empire and the Emperor, are destroying the balance or balanced state it seeks to be in. And balance in Star Wars is not what many seem to think it is. It's not some sort of perfect blend between the dark and the light. Rather, it's something more along the lines of harmony, something more like a system working as intended.
You and the Naboo form a symbiont circle. What happens to one of you will affect the other. You must understand this.
And that system, the Force, life itself, which is the Force for all intents and purposes, is meant for everyone to indeed have a place and a purpose in it, a life, should they choose to seek it out or to follow its plan. This is where free will and choice do come into the picture. You don't have to follow your destiny, but you should be allowed to if you so desire. And if they do, the Force will help guide or control them towards it, to where it is that they belong. And if they don't, they'll make their own path, and more often than not, or almost never, will that new path cause imbalance, because that's only brought about by taking choice or free will away from others. That only happens when you are so selfish or selfish to the extreme, like a Sith. Which is then, in a way, the problem with the Empire and the Emperor. They are the epitome of selfishness. They are controlling everything. They control what you are allowed to do, where you are allowed to go, who you are allowed to become. You are not allowed to make the choices in life that you are supposed to be allowed to make, given how the Force wants to work. You don't exactly have free will under the reign of the Empire, and thus this causes imbalance. This disrupts the harmony. And so, something must stop it. Something must bring the balance back, and usually that something would be the Jedi, and in this case, yes, eventually the Jedi will play a role in destroying the Empire. But usually the Jedi, those chosen by the Force to lead a life of total selflessness, to give up attachments, and to live strictly for others, guided by compassion and an unconditional love for all, as Anakin puts it in Attack of the Clones, they would try to stop the Empire and to destroy the Sith. But of course the Jedi, already failed, as did the Chosen One from stopping the Sith or stopping Palpatine from bringing about the Empire. And I do believe Anakin was meant to stop all of that before it ever happened. I've gone into my belief that Qui-Gon was meant to train Anakin, but Maul in the Duel of the Fates, appropriately named, stopped all of that from happening. And so now with the Jedi gone, all that's left are for everyday people to fight back and to somehow stop the Empire. Everyday people like Cassian, who are perhaps special in some way and are able to play a bigger role they may never have been originally meant to play, but the Force has now chosen them, should they choose, to play a different role than they maybe once were meant for, to embrace a different destiny. Because despite what I was saying before about Cassian having a greater purpose, I'm not so sure that is true at all. I'm not so sure he was ever meant to play the part that he ultimately does. I think his destiny, his purpose all along, where he is meant to be, is simply with Bix, which is where he even says he wants to be. It's also where the Force Healer says to Bix that he is perhaps meant to be, that Cassian is meant to be with her.
I don't remember not knowing him.
Maybe you're the place he needs to be.
And I think Bix knows or can feel that too, which is why she makes the choice that she does, why she leaves Cassian, because she knows if she doesn't, he will convince her to run away together. And though, sure, maybe they can find somewhere in the galaxy to live happy together, somewhere off the Empire's radar, but Bix can't live that way. She can't live knowing the Empire is still out there, still controlling and ruining the lives of so many people, still destroying the balance and robbing so many of choice and free will, of the hope of finding their place and purpose as well. And so the great irony of the show Andor, of the life of Cassian, is that he was almost certainly meant for something simple. He was meant to be with Bix and his son, but he partially made the choice because he always had a choice. He could have gone after Bix after she left him. That choice was not taken away from him. He just realized that that is not what she wanted. But partially he made the choice, and partially he had the choice made for him, both by the Force and by Bix, to ultimately give his life to something else, to fulfill a destiny that was never his own, but needed to be fulfilled nonetheless by somebody, one that would eventually see balance brought back to the galaxy. And for me, and you are free to disagree, but this is an incredible use of the Force. It is subtle, it is simple, but it is perfect, because oftentimes people like the Force to be a bit more mysterious and vague, to be there in the story, but not necessarily the main attraction. And as much as I do love discussing the Force and trying to figure it all out, I also do like it that way, when things are a bit more mysterious and open to interpretation when the Force is used. When you truly have to think and puzzle things out. And that's what Andor has done with its use of the Force. It's almost like this which came first, the chicken or the egg thing, where you're not entirely sure if Cassian was all along meant to be the guy who helped defeat the Empire by helping steal the plans to the Death Star, or if he was always meant to be with Bix and made the choice to give that up for something else, something more important to the galaxy, you could certainly argue, But that saw him personally lose out on so much. That saw him personally lose out on his own destiny. Well, that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about this one. What was Cassian's actual destiny? Was it to be with Bix, or was it to blow up the Death Star, or help blow up the Death Star? Or maybe it was something else entirely. Either way, whatever you think, take to the comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.